Coming up on Primetime News, in her televised address to the nation, President Park Geun-hye asked for greater support in reform efforts to boost the sagging economy. And in tune with such economic revival efforts, a revised tax code designed to allow tax deductions and breaks for domestic, foreign, and small and mid-sized companies is in the pipelines. Stealing the spotlight at the ASEAN Regional Forum was Ri Tong-il, spokesman of North Korea's foreign ministry, who held a press conference detailing their take on the situation on the Korean Peninsula. Stay with us for these stories and much more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Thursday, August 6th. I'm Daniel Choy.
And I'm Hwang Ji-hye. Thanks for joining us.
Well, we are nearing the midpoint of President Park Geun-hye's 5-year term in office.
And today she addressed the nation, laying out plans for running the country during the remainder of her term.
She placed strong emphasis on labor reform, calling the next 3 to 4 years a watershed for sustainable growth. Our Choi Yu-sun shares with us the essence of her speech.
Emphasizing structural reform as the key to shoring up Korea's new growth engines, President Park said her priority is revamping the country's rigid labor market. With the youth unemployment rate surpassing 10%, the president sought public support for a wage peak system of reducing wages for older workers to hire more young people.
저는 청년 일자리 문제를 해결하는 것이야말로 우리 사회를 건강하게 만드는 토대이자 저출산 문제를 해결하는 핵심적인 열쇠라고 생각합니다.
President Park then called for fairness and flexibility in the labor market, determining employment and wages based on a worker's abilities and achievements, not job security or how long he or she has been employed.
청년들에게 더 많은 일자리를 제공할 수 있도록 대기업과 고임금 정규직들이 조금씩 양보와 타협의 정신을 발휘해 줄 것을 간곡히 당부드립니다.
The president also vowed to implement the wage peak system in all public institutions this year, saying she expects to see 8,000 new jobs in 2 years. Prompting labor and management to resume negotiations with the government on labor reforms, President Park promised to raise unemployment benefits to 60% of a person's average wage and help the unemployed find jobs. In other areas, the president pledged to unify redundant public sector projects, expand a program that gives students a semester free of exams to foster creativity, and remove the corporate protectionism in the financial sector. President Park said it is the public that stands at the center of state affairs and only they can bring about changes and improvements to the country. She then urged the entire nation to join hands and share the burden for everyone's coexistence and prosperity. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Following the president's address, Korea's rival parties, as well as representatives from the management and labor sectors, issued their reactions to her speech. Our Park Ji-won has the details.
After hearing President Park's vision for the second half of her presidency, the ruling Saenuri Party vowed to fully support her drive to reform the labor, public and financial sectors, as well as the education system.
With President Park Geun-hye, the Saenuri Party will commit to completing the reform of the 4 major sectors that will determine the country's future.
The spokesperson also said the party shares the president's sense of urgency about making the labor market more flexible to create more jobs for young people. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party took a different view. The party's spokesperson said the speech was full of instructions, but there were no words of apology for the government's poor initial handling of the MERS outbreak or the surveillance allegations surrounding the spy agency. He said reforming Korea's family-run conglomerates is a more pressing issue than shaking up the labor market.
Given the messy feud over control of Lotte Group, what is most urgent is reforming the conglomerates. The president, however, did not suggest any measures for improving their outdated management structures and instead shifted all the responsibility for the nation's economic failings onto the labor market.
The Korea Employers Federation welcomed the president's plan to make the labor market more flexible. In a statement, the federation said the president's prediction that reforming the labor market will lead to the more jobs for young people is accurate. Conversely, the Federation of Korean Trade Unions, representing the labor sector, urged the administration to not force workers to make any more sacrifices and said the government should focus on improving Korea's skilled labor structure, infamous for having some of the longest working hours in the world. It said what is needed at this point is for companies to hire more people, pointing to the internal reserves of Korea's 30 top companies, which reached a combined $610 billion during the first quarter. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
As the president focused on revitalizing the economy in her fourth national address, the government rolled out a plan to revise the country's tax code. And much of the focus was once again on stimulating the sagging economy as it suffers from faltering exports and the recent MERS outbreak. Our Shin Se-min reports.
Armed with a plan to rewrite the country's tax code on top of its recent stimulus injection worth around $10 billion, the Korean government is going all in to prop up growth. Under the revised tax code, the finance ministry says both domestic and foreign companies will be eligible for tax deductions that encourage them to hire more young people. Small and mid-sized businesses will get a tax break of over $4,000 for every new young worker they hire and $21,000 for large firms. The measure goes hand in hand with the government's efforts to ease the youth unemployment rate, which stood over 10% at the end of June, while the overall unemployment rate is just below 4%. The finance ministry also said it will offer taxpayers an individual savings account, or ISA, starting next year. The new scheme allows ordinary workers and businessmen to pile up financial assets at lower tax rates with the hope to save the account holders some $470 million. Although the tax law revision plan is expected to raise the annual tax revenue by roughly $930 million, concerns still linger over the country's fiscal soundness.
It won't be enough to reduce the growing fiscal debt because collecting more money from high-income earners and large companies will only help in the short term. Raising the wages of ordinary workers will have a greater impact down the road.
Stressing the need for structural reforms, the expert says the implementation of wage peak system and raising the wages for ordinary workers should come first in order to collect enough taxes. With the proposed tax law revisions, the government wraps up all its stimulus plans for the latter half of the year. Now, the question is whether the government measures will be enough to prop up the crumbling economy. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Turning our attention to the vicious family feud at Korea's fifth largest conglomerate, the Korean government says it will closely monitor Lotte Group's opaque corporate governance structure and capital flows if necessary. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said today he's disappointed with the battle over which the son of Lotte Group founder Shin Kyuk-ho will take over the company. This puts Lotte under even more pressure to clarify its management structure after the Fair Trade Commission has asked the conglomerate to submit shareholding records of its Japanese affiliates.
And as the bitter succession battle at Lotte Group draws backlash from the public against conglomerates, the rival parties are moving to reform them. Our Ji Myung-gil has more.
The ruling Saenuri Party showed its determination to prod private business groups, or chaebols in Korean, to reduce the amount of cross-shareholding among their affiliates and improve their governance structures.
It doesn't make sense that business owners are able to exercise unbridled power through the current shareholding structure with only a handful of shares. We must prevent them from controlling their companies like an empire.
Korea's fair trade law revised in 2013 bans new circular shareholding investments, but not existing ones like those in place at Lotte Group. The ruling party's chief policymaker said Thursday at a meeting with government officials that the party would seek to undo existing cross-shareholding investments at the country's conglomerates if necessary. He also said he has asked Lotte to submit details on its complex ownership structure by the end of the month. Those present at the meeting also discussed making conglomerates disclose their overseas stock holdings as well as their affiliated companies offshore. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is urging the government to pursue economic democratization, promote fair competition, and rein in the chaebol's cross-shareholding practices.
The conglomerate-based economy is now seen as undermining the Korean economy, which has prompted calls to reform the anachronistic system. The government must get rid of its pro-chaebol stance and strive to foster a fair market economy.
The NPAD also said conglomerates are becoming a risk factor for the economy rather than serving as a growth engine. The chaebol have been crucial to Korea's economic growth over the years, but they have amassed a remarkable record of embezzlement, bribery, and financial crimes that have enriched and empowered the families that run the businesses at the expense of employees and shareholders. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
In other news, President Park Geun-hye is expected to pardon corporate leaders and millions of others next week in time for Korea's Liberation Day. The Justice Ministry is preparing a list of people to be pardoned and is expected to be finalized next week during a cabinet meeting led by President Park Geun-hye herself. The move is in line with her efforts to revive the economy and boost public morale. Politicians aren't expected to make the cut, but many people will receive amnesty for less serious offenses, such as traffic violations. SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won and his brother, Vice Chairman Choi Jae-won, and Hanwha Group Chairman Kim Seung-hyun, all serving sentences for embezzlement and dereliction of duty, are likely to be pardoned. President Park's spokesperson wouldn't confirm any names that may appear on that list. The ruling Saenuri Party has rejected the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy's proposal for some changes in the election system. The NPAD wants to change the way proportional representatives are chosen and in exchange would accept the ruling party's proposal for an open primary system. But Saenuri leader Kim Moo-sung said Thursday the two proposals are about separate issues and should not be part of a package deal. Kim said it will be hard to introduce the opposition's proposed system, which would increase the number of lawmakers, considering the elections are only 8 months away. He added, however, the system could potentially reduce the regionalism in Korea and that his party is open to further discussions on the subject.
The ASEAN Regional Forum in Malaysia is garnering much attention for being the only event to invite all members of the six-party talks, including, of course, North Korea. Though the gathering is about promoting dialogue for peace and regional security, North Korea had something rather sour to say on today's session. Our Hwang Ji-hye tells us more.
The 22nd Regional Security Forum of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, kicked off on Thursday in Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia. The forum, which brings together top diplomats from 27 countries, is known to be one of the rare international events that North Korea attends every year. This year's meeting was also important in that it included all members of the six-party talks for denuclearization. However, on the sidelines of the event, the isolated regime lashed out at the United States. At a press conference on Thursday, Ri Tong-il, a spokesman for North Korea's Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong, said Pyongyang has no choice but to keep its nuclear programs to protect itself from U.S. hostility. In English, Lee said that the future of North Korea's nuclear program will all depend on the attitude of the United States and that the U.S. is hell-bent on eliminating the communist regime. With that, it seems like North Korea's nuclear programs will continue to raise tensions in the region. Meanwhile, at a separate meeting of foreign ministers on Wednesday, South Korea's Yoon Byung-se asked for constant support from the ASEAN member nations to prevent North Korea's possible provocations in the future. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
South Korea's former First Lady Lee Hee-ho has completed the second day of her humanitarian trip to North Korea. According to the Kim Daejung Peace Center, she spent Thursday visiting North Korean care facilities for children and the elderly. Lee arrived at Myohyangsan Mountain around 6:30 p.m., which means her chances of meeting North Korean leader Kim Jong-un today are highly unlikely. She's scheduled to stay at Myohyangsan Mountain for the next 2 days and return to Seoul on Saturday. Lee is the widow of late former South Korean President Kim Daejung, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2000 for his peace and reconciliation efforts with Pyongyang.
It's been 70 days since the U.S. military mistakenly sent live anthrax samples to a U.S. Air Force base in Korea. To leave no stone unturned on the disturbing case, the two countries launched their first joint investigation into the matter. Our Kim Hyun-bin has this report.
Officials from Korea and the United States conducted a joint on-site inspection of Osan Air Base on Thursday, after a live anthrax sample was mistakenly sent there in April. The Defense Ministry says the visit is aimed at calming public concerns by having first-hand verification about whether appropriate safety measures were taken at the facility. The group looked at how the anthrax sample came onto the base and the steps that were taken thereafter, including the sample's disposal. The Iranian shipment has raised calls in Korea for the government to have much stronger oversight of biological agents brought into the country by the U.S. military. In May, the Pentagon announced that the live anthrax samples had been sent by accident from a military laboratory in Utah to other labs in the U.S. and several foreign countries, including Korea. A joint working group launched earlier this month is currently reviewing law revisions aimed at preventing a recurrence of the incident.
Korea's defense ministry says that it will do everything necessary to prevent similar incidents from recurring, adding that it will get to the source of the problem, no matter how long it takes. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
It has emerged that the Japanese government was notified of Mitsubishi Materials' plan to apologize to American POWs forced into labor during World War II before the apology was issued last month. The news seems to reaffirm earlier speculation the Japanese government was in fact involved in the apology. Our Connie Kim gives us more details.
Prominent Japanese firm Mitsubishi Materials notified the government of its plan to apologize to American prisoners of war last month. Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reported Thursday on the comment made by Yukio Okamoto, an advisor to Japan-based Mitsubishi Materials Corporation, raising speculation the firm had gotten permission for the apology from the government. Okamoto also made clear that the apology was solely extended by Mitsubishi and said the government has previously reaffirmed that it already apologized to prisoners of war for their brutal treatment during wartime and it has no plans to compensate them. Last month, a Japanese company issued a formal apology for using American POWs as slave laborers during World War II. In response, the Japanese embassy in Washington had said the apology was made solely on Mitsubishi's initiative and that the government was not involved. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga refrained from commenting on the matter. In his remarks, Okamoto drew a fine line between the prisoners of war and the tens of thousands of Korean victims of the forced labor program. Okamoto said Koreans were technically Japanese citizens during Japan's colonial rule, and their situation was totally different from that of the American POWs. An estimated 6,500 Koreans were forced into labor at Mitsubishi's affiliates, with more than 4,000 forced to work at Mitsubishi Mining, the predecessor of Mitsubishi Materials. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Time for today's top international headlines. We turn to our Lee Sun-ho at the News Center.
Today's focus: Malaysia and France differ on the piece of an airplane wing believed to be from a missing Malaysian jetliner. Hiroshima recognizes the 70th anniversary of the first atomic bombing, and fans of the Marvel comic anti-hero Deadpool are treated to another amazing trailer.
Well, Sun-ho, let's start with the conflicting views over the plane debris between France and Malaysia.
Well, guys, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak initially said that the wing fragment discovered on Reunion Island was confirmed to be from the missing flight MH370. However, French officials stopped short of offering confirmation, saying that it's still too early to tell. The Prime Minister's statement that there was physical evidence of the tragic flight initially signaled a breakthrough in the search for the plane, but French officials with custody of the wing said there was only strong indications that the part is from MH370 and that more analysis of it will be needed. The Australian Deputy Prime Minister, who's also been following the case, came forward to explain both sides.
Well, it's for the Malaysian government, as the government responsible for the investigation into the loss of MH370, to make that call. We respect the view that they believe they have sufficient evidence to make a categorical statement of that nature. The French inquiry, of course, has not been quite so conclusive. It's conducted by a judge under a totally different system. They still have some reservations.
In the latest development, Malaysia's transport minister said that the debris on Reunion Island, more debris of it was found, including a plane window and some aluminum foil. And turning to Japan, thousands came together in Hiroshima, marking the 70th year since the United States dropped an atomic bomb in the city during World War II. Citizens bowed their heads in a moment of silence while the peace bell rang. Those who remembered how the bomb fell on the morning of August 6, 1945, were among those in attendance. The mayor of Hiroshima then came forward and urged that nuclear weapons be abolished.
In order for us to live together, we need to end the use of all nuclear weapons, the ultimate inhumane, pure evil. And the moment to get this done is now.
The Hiroshima atomic bombing was the first of its kind in the world, followed by another on Nagasaki 3 days later. By the end of the year after the Hiroshima bomb was dropped, 140,000 people were left dead, some from the immediate blast, while others due to radiation exposure. World War II finally came to an end with Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945. And lastly, comic book fans were treated to a new trailer of the upcoming Marvel movie, Deadpool. Released by 20th Century Fox, it reveals the character's beginnings. The short clip shows a cancer-stricken Wade Wilson, played by Ryan Reynolds, transforming into the anti-hero with self-healing capabilities. Deadpool, also known as the Merc with a Mouth for his endless talking and the use of profane language, has been a huge hit with fans. He made his debut in 1991 through an X-Men spin-off. Though Reynolds first played the original character in X-Men Origins Wolverines, he left many disappointed as his mouth was sewn shut and he was almost unrecognizable as Deadpool fans know and love. After fan pressure, Reynolds returned to the role and expressed his gratitude, tweeting, "People keep thanking me for getting Deadpool made. I didn't get it made. You did." And that does it for your international news at this hour. I'll see you again tomorrow.
Hello and welcome. I'm Ri Ji-hye here with your latest weather updates. Hot temperatures broke records across the Korean Peninsula today. Heat wave alerts remain in effect throughout much of the country, and the temperature here in Seoul climbed up to 34.4 this afternoon, and Daegu saw a high of 38.3. But the temperature in Daegu will drop a bit tomorrow compared to the past few days, but it's still going to be a scorching 34, and the temperature in Seoul and other cities will remain largely unchanged under partly to mostly sunny skies. So on that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju will start the day at 25 and will climb up to 34 tomorrow afternoon, while Busan will see a high of 31. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Daejeon and Jeju Island will climb up to 35 and 31, while Dokdo peaks at 29. Now the heat wave will not last forever. This Saturday is already Ipchu, or the beginning of autumn, so the temperatures will start to go down from this weekend, and next week is shaping up to be a slightly cooler than what we've had. So temperature will be definitely lower than the first week of August. That's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thanks for staying with us.
We'll be back tomorrow, same time. Goodbye for now.